In the late 1970s, a disturbing pattern emerged across Peru as a string of young girls vanished without a trace. At first, the disappearances went largely unnoticed, as many of the girls were street children or members of indigenous tribes. However, the alarming situation took a pivotal turn when a group of Ayachuco's people intervened in the attempted abduction of a 9-year-old girl. Their courageous actions thwarted the sinister plans of a man identified as Pedro Lopez. Pedro Lopez, popularly known as the Monster of the Andes, is a Colombian serial killer, child rapist, and fugitive who murdered a minimum of 110 people, mostly young women and girls, from 1969 to 1980. Lopez claimed to have murdered over 300 people. He is considered by many to be one of the most prolific serial killers and rapists in history. Welcome to Maya's reality channel, where we bring you compelling true crime stories. From unsolved mysteries to notorious criminals, we leave no stone unturned as we navigate the dark corridors of real-life crimes. So don't forget to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to stay updated about new uploads. Now let's get back to the story. Pedro Alonso Lopez was born on the 8th of October 1948 in the municipality of Venadillo, Tolima, Colombia. Pedro Lopez was the 7th of 13 children born to Benilda Lopez de Castaneda, who at the time worked as a sex worker. Lopez had a difficult childhood due to the violence of the household, and the absence of a father figure worsened the situation. Lopez's father, Megdardo Reyes, had been murdered during a political struggle in La Violencia 6 months before his birth. Growing up without a father figure really took a toll on Lopez as he faced the harsh realities of poverty and strife. His upbringing, which was marred by the specter of violence and discord, cast a dark shadow over his early years, and it laid the groundwork for the troubled path that lay ahead. Lopez's disturbing behaviors began at a very young age, as he was banished from the house by his mother at the age of 8 when she caught him attempting to molest his sister. As Lopez became homeless, he wandered the streets of Bogota and was frequently sexually abused as he struggled to fit into this harsh lifestyle. After the incident, he joined a gang of street children for protection. At age 12, he was adopted by an American immigrant family. 2 years after the enrollment, he reportedly ran away from school following a molestation from a male teacher. By the time he turned 18, he began stealing cars and selling them off to sustain himself. In 1969, Lopez was sentenced to 7 years in prison for auto theft. During this period of incarceration, he was raked by 3 other inmates whom he killed later on. However, authorities saw this as an act of self-defense and only extended his sentence by 2 years. Prison life proved to be a harsh and unforgiving environment for Lopez. Isolated from society and stripped of his freedom, he was left to grapple with the demons of his past. However, even within the confines of his cell, Lopez's dark impulses remained unchecked. His time behind bars would prove to be a mere interlude in his reign of terror, foreshadowing the horrors yet to come. Upon his release from prison in 1978, Lopez began wandering throughout the northwestern area of South America, eventually arriving in Peru. Peru, with its bustling cities and sprawling countryside, offered Lopez the perfect hunting ground. Here, amidst the hustle and bustle of urban life and the tranquility of rural landscapes, Lopez's depraved fantasies found fertile ground. His arrival in Peru marked the beginning of a reign of terror that would grip the nation in fear, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. He later claimed that during this period, he had killed over 100 girls between the ages of 8 and 12 across Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru, which would eventually earn him the moniker Monster of the Andes. His victims were mainly street children and from indigenous tribes. After luring a victim away from her loved ones and local community, Lopez explained, saying, "I would take her to a secret hideaway where prepared graves waited. I cuddled them, and then raped them at sunrise. At the first sign of light, I would get excited. I forced the girl into sex and put my hands around her throat. When the sun rose, I would strangle her. Lopez delighted in watching a certain light go out in his victims' eyes, but his murderous rituals didn't end with the young girls' deaths. He would then violate their dead bodies before hiding or burying the corpses before he went after his next victims. He also noted that he never kidnapped or killed white girls because their parents were too watchful. While these claims are unverifiable, it is known that Lopez was briefly captured by an Ayacuchon indigenous tribe in south-central Peru after attempting to abduct a 9-year-old girl. The Ayacuchons stripped Lopez of his clothes and belongings and buried him in the sand. Lopez later recalled his near-death experience. Indians in Peru had me tied up and buried in sand to my neck when they found what I had been doing to their daughters. They had placed syrup on me and were going to let me be eaten by ants. However, Pedro's encounter with the Ayacuchon tribe took a dramatic turn when an American missionary lady arrived at the scene in her jeep. Moved by compassion or a sense of justice, she intervened on behalf of Pedro Lopez. She begged the indigenous tribe to spare his life, and in exchange, she pledged to ensure that Lopez would be handed over to the authorities and face the consequences of his actions. The Ayacuchos reluctantly agreed to let the woman take Lopez to the police, dug him up, and returned his belongings to him. But as Lopez and the American woman walked away, some accounts say she never handed him over to the police. Other accounts say that Lopez was handed over, but managed to escape as he was being sent over to Ecuador. In either case, Lopez was once again free, and his violent crimes continued. After being deported from Peru, Pedro Alonso Lopez resumed his horrific killing spree, preying on young girls as he traveled through various countries. Despite the increasing number of missing persons cases, particularly young girls, in areas where Lopez was known to have traveled, authorities initially attributed the disappearances to human trafficking rather than serial killings. The scale and brutality of Lopez's crimes were such that they went unnoticed or were misinterpreted by law enforcement. The true nature of his atrocities remained hidden, allowing Lopez to evade capture and continue his reign of terror unchecked. The tragic reality was that while Lopez roamed freely, more innocent lives were lost, leaving their fates sealed by the merciless actions of a remorseless killer. In April 1980, the tranquil areas surrounding Ambato, Ecuador, were ravaged by a devastating natural disaster. Flash floods swept through the region, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. Amidst the chaos and devastation, the floodwaters unearthed a chilling secret, revealing the remains of several young girls who had been reported missing, their fates a mystery until that moment. The grim discovery sent shockwaves through the community and prompted the authorities to reopen their investigations into the disappearances. The newfound evidence shed light on a dark and sinister truth, linking the missing girls to a pattern of heinous crimes that had gone undetected for far too long. The revelations from the floodwaters marked a turning point in the hunt for the perpetrator. The police, armed with new leads and a renewed sense of urgency, intensified their efforts to bring the perpetrator to justice. Their relentless pursuit would eventually lead to the arrest of Pedro Alonso Lopez later that same year, bringing an end to his reign of terror and providing a semblance of closure to the families of the victims. Not long after the flooding, a local woman named Carvina Poveda was on her way to the market with her 12-year-old daughter Marie when Lopez attempted to abduct the girl. Local traders were able to overpower Lopez and hold him until the police arrived. While in police custody after his arrest, Lopez initially refused to cooperate during his interrogation, choosing to remain silent. Eventually, he began to confess his crimes to police captain Pastor Cordova, who had been placed in the same cell as him while posing as a prisoner. Lopez boasted that in total, he had murdered over 200 in Ecuador, some tens in Peru, and many more in Colombia. He described his modus operandi as first luring the victim away from public spaces with a trinket, before raping and strangling them with his bare hands. He additionally claimed that he would occasionally exhume the victims' bodies from their burial site and have tea parties with them. When asked about his motive for the murders, Lopez reportedly said, "I lost my innocence at the age of 8, so I decided to do the same to as many girls as I could." Soon after his confession, he directed the authorities to the bodies of 53 victims, and his confessions soon led to the confirmation of a total of 110 bodies in Ecuador. A few months later, Lopez claimed to have killed many more, placing the total number, by his count, at more than 300. However, some experts suggested that Lopez may have been exaggerating, and that the number of victims may in fact just be around 70. Later in 1980, Lopez was convicted of murder and sentenced to 16 years in prison, the maximum prison sentence available in Ecuador at the time. This marked a critical moment in the pursuit of justice for his numerous victims and their families, offering a measure of closure after years of fear and uncertainty. Lopez served his prison sentence at the Garcia Moreno prison near Quito and was released from prison 2 years early, on August 31, 1994. In an interview shortly before his release, Lopez described himself as the man of the century and said he was being released for good behavior. After his release, Lopez was deported to Colombia and was detained as an illegal immigrant on arrival before being handed over to Colombian authorities. However, prosecutors were unable to make a case against him, and he was instead declared insane and committed to a mental hospital. This decision was met with widespread disbelief and outrage, as many believed it to be a gross miscarriage of justice. The declaration of insanity was seen by some as a convenient way to avoid the complexities of prosecuting a serial killer of Lopez's magnitude. In a shocking turn of events, Pedro Alonso Lopez was declared sane in 1998, leading to his release on a meager $70 bail. However, this freedom came with conditions, including the requirement to periodically report to the authorities. Despite these conditions, Lopez's compliance was short-lived, as he almost immediately absconded, disappearing into the shadows once again. The last confirmed sighting of Lopez was in September 1999 when he visited the National Civil Registry to renew his citizenship card. This fleeting glimpse was the last trace of the man who had terrorized South America for years, leaving authorities and the public alike in a state of uncertainty and fear. Lopez's disappearance has since become a haunting mystery, with his whereabouts remaining unknown to this day. Despite efforts to locate him, he has managed to evade capture, slipping through the fingers of justice and leaving a trail of unanswered questions in his wake. His ability to vanish into obscurity serves as a chilling reminder of the elusive nature of evil and the complexities of tracking down those who commit heinous acts. In 2002, the Colombian National Police and Interpol issued warrants for the arrest of Pedro Alonso Lopez in connection with a murder that bore striking similarities to his known modus operandi. The authorities were alerted to a pattern of behavior that echoed Lopez's past crimes, prompting a renewed effort to apprehend the fugitive killer. Despite these efforts, Lopez remained elusive, managing to evade capture and disappear once again. The Interpol warrant, while initially active, was eventually deactivated in 2005, further complicating the search for Lopez and adding to the frustration of law enforcement agencies. However, Lopez's reign of terror did not end there. In 2012, he was named as a possible suspect in a homicide committed in Tunja, Colombia. The similarities between this crime and Lopez's past atrocities raised concerns that he may have resurfaced, once again striking fear into the hearts of those living in the region. Lopez's ability to evade capture and continue his violent crimes serves as a stark reminder of the challenges faced by law enforcement in tracking down elusive fugitives. His continued status as a fugitive highlights the need for ongoing vigilance and cooperation between international authorities to bring him to justice and ensure that he can no longer harm innocent lives. Alright guys, we have come to the end of this video. Let us know what you think about Pedro Lopez's sudden disappearance. Do you think he is responsible for these recent murders? Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments section, and please don't forget to leave us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to support this video.